Oh, just worked.
Oh,
What just worked?
You too?
Yes.
okay.
Good job, Brooke.
But I choose not.
Well, that's me.
Oh, okay.
She turned it off because she gave up.
Makes me too nervous.
Oh, I don't want to do that because- Hang on.
He's in the round.
It's not an action item. So when we get to presentations, I'll just say Chief Evans is en route. When
And
we
if
get
he
to, we'll
gets
let
there,
him do it. I'll take that, and so we don't have to change the agenda.
So Brooke, are we live?
We are live and ready to
Okay.
go. Yes.
So, okay.
All right, thank you everybody for joining us. We're running a few minutes behind. We had some technical difficulties. It's 6:14 and we'll get the meeting called to order and start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Brooke, would you like to call roll?
Molly,
Here.
Rebecca,
Here.
Justin,
Here.
Matt,
Here.
Debbie.
Here.
5 members present. Thank you.
Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda?
None.
Justin?
None.
Okay. None being heard, we'll move on to presentations. We're scheduled for the Upper Pine River Fire Department first.
I would ask that the fire department had a situation, so I'd ask that whenever Chief Evans shows up, that we just put that into the agenda at that time.
Works perfect. Everyone okay with that? Okay. Next, we'll move on to communications from the audience. We don't have many people out there. Anyone who would like to speak? Okay, we'll move on to district reports, and Mr. Hanover is up first with the superintendent report.
Thank you. First, we're very saddened to have lost Mitch Winterstrom, an amazing teacher, mentor, and friend. Thank you to the staff at Bayfield Middle School and to the district counseling team for their efforts during a very tough time for our staff and students. Our thoughts are with her entire family. Thank you to the Board of Education for a very productive retreat. I appreciate your commitment to moving our district forward and coming together as a team to focus on the best interest of students and staff in our district. As we discussed at our retreat, we'll be updating the board operating norms. We will focus first on the meeting protocol norms. Please review those and let Ms. Parnell and myself know if you have any recommendations prior to the next meeting. I've included them for you below, and I'm not going to read through all those. We received a letter from Governor Polis regarding the special session that was called following the failure of Proposition HH. The governors urged each school district to reduce mill levies or to look at their mill levy overrides. I've included the letter below, as well as forwarded the response from Case and Casby to each of you. This request would have a significant impact on the funding in our district and would be detrimental to future planning. We're evaluating the roof and structural integrity of the Bayfield Middle School building. Although we replaced a large portion of that roof last year, we've identified leaks in the remaining portions of the roof. We've sent out our intent to apply for a BEST grant to offset cost of the roof if a replacement is deemed necessary. This does not commit us to replacing the roof. It only serves as a placeholder for us to apply for the BEST grant if we deem it necessary. It's my recommendation that we begin a conversation in January or set a BOE work session to determine our direction with facilities at Bayfield Middle School and district-wide. We're working on a master facilities plan that should help determine the need for repair or replacement for many of our facilities. This wasn't in here when I typed this, but further conversations has led us to believe that we may ask that the January 23rd meeting become a work session where we would have no action items, and that we could spend time during that work session talking about the facilities plan, talking about the best route forward for Bayfield Middle School, and discussing whether we look at roof replacements or if we need to look at a larger project. So we may flip that meeting to a work session, and the only difference is we would have no action items at that meeting. We'll be handing out holiday bonuses next Wednesday, December 20th, beginning at the district office at 8 a.m. It will take most of the day to reach all district staff. Please let me know if you're going to be able to attend any or all of the day. So we do have a more detailed schedule now. We will start here at 8 o'clock with the transportation department when they return from route. After that, we'll have maintenance here at 8:30. Then we'll start going to the schools. We'll have a break in there for lunch that we will all go to lunch together, whoever's attending, and then we'll finish the schools in the afternoon.
That's good.
Congratulations to Mr. Turner for being elected to a board seat for the Colorado Association of School Boards. Mr. Turner will represent the southwest part of the state on the CASB board. We're looking forward to his advocacy for our rural districts, and it's great for Bayfield to have this type of representation.
Just on that.
That was a nice job.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
And that's all I have.
Any questions for Mr. Hamhart?
Is there currently like any sort of master maintenance plan
There is
program?
not. And that's one of the things, as part of, as we come forward, Mr. Talbot, with a new strategic plan, our plan is to bring a master facilities plan with it. There is actually not a replacement schedule for our big items. We budgeted last year $1.2 million to be able to look at capital expenditures and look at some of those things, as well as some vehicle purchases and bus purchases. We identified last year that there is not any type of replacement plan when a boiler goes down or anything like that. So Mr. Hesford and I are working to put that all together with Mr. Corcoran to try to get something so that we know how far out. And in fact, the last 2 days, we've been doing a lot of research, going back to finding the original age of like the middle school or all of our buildings and starting to look. I mean, we're even 5 years in with our newest buildings, 5 or 6 years in now, and you're starting to see, you know, some of the boilers, some of the HVAC systems, some of those types of things, and there has not been a replacement schedule. So we are putting that together.
Okay.
Because, well, it's important, frankly.
And I don't know how you're going to put it together. I mean, I'd like to see something that's, you know, somewhat immediate, you know, 3-year, 5-year, 10-year, so we can actually.
And we did have,
Okay.
CDE came in, if I remember right, it was in 2020 that we were able to identify and find a report that they did that has a lot of those pieces. So that's going to do the urgency. But our intent is to, almost exactly how you said, to color code it as red as urgent and get down to saying, okay, when we get down to the things that are operating well, we still need to understand that they may not be in 5-10 years
Right.
and where that's at. But, you know, it brings us back, and it's no hidden secret, and that's the conversation that we're going to have, that we have to look at Bayfield Middle School and decide, is it any longer feasible to continue to pour money into, or do we have to have a different conversation on either replacing or remodeling that building?
Getting decently old.
It is.
It is 50 years
Justin and I
old.
went to high school there
Yeah.
a minute
So-
ago.
Before we move on to the next item, if you don't have any other questions, I'd like to switch back and allow the Upper Pine Fire Department to come in and give their presentation. If you're comfortable with that, Chief Evans,
Yes, sorry.
are you good with that?
Yes.
Sorry I'm late. We had a chimney fire down on County Road 514, so, but unfortunately didn't get in the attic or anything, so.
Good.
So for those that don't know, I'm Chief Evans. I'm the fire chief for Upper Pine. And Leon asked me to kind of just pop in and say where we're at with our current project that you may have read about or seen in the Herald recently. So as you guys are probably, you know, especially people that have lived here a long time, you know that we've been looking to replace this fire station across the way over here. This station, when it was built over here, was never really built to house full-time people. It was a volunteer station. It's had numerous add-ons. We had an engineer look at it. They said probably shouldn't be remodeled, or at least not as a working fire station. So this has been like a 5 or 6 year project, and I know we've talked about some other things like you know, a joint facility down there at South Street, and we looked at whether we were just going to expand this building and try to get the button factory before Jay moved in over there, and that didn't work out. And then we talked to Jay over at Builder Supply and tried to get him a new place, because he said he would be happy to sell us that place over there for what he paid for it, if we could find him a good place to move. And it's interesting, the Builder Supply and rental places are almost like having an oil refinery in your backyard. Nobody wants it. So he struggled with that. So Paul Peoples came to us and actually offered us 4 acres across the way here. And we looked at that, and then we looked at how much the utilities were going to cost to be brought to it. It was $1.2 million to bring utilities in the frontage road down, which was kind of crazy. We did put in an earmark request with our congressional representatives. And to my understanding is at least the intersection has made it into congressional earmark. But frontage road and everything else that was in there did not make it in. So that made that site over there a little bit more costly than what we had reserves to purchase land for. And then EIS came forward and offered us the 2 acres that is currently over there on Bayfield Center. And we wound up using some of our reserves to go ahead and purchase that because number one, we were able to pick up our existing building and what our architects have already done and be able to pick it up and move it, put it right there, just turn it around a little bit so we didn't have to incur any additional architect expenses. And then everything's brought to, all the utilities are brought to that site. So, and it's already been graded and plotted. And the other great thing about it is it's all in the town of Bayfield, so we didn't have to deal with the county, which was another plus. And the Bayfield Planning Commission approved our initial plans for everything over there at the center. And so we're off and running. So we've had an architect that has been with us for about 5 years with a variety of different things. Oz Architecture out of Denver. Oz is probably one of the premier fire station builders in the state of Colorado. They've built hundreds of fire stations, including some of the newer fire stations at Denver and South Metro and West Metro and Castle Rock. So we went to a couple of years ago, we sent a couple people to the fire station design conference, and I was pleasantly surprised that Jesse Larson spent his entire free time making sure that he made it around to almost all 300 vendors and screened every one of them, which was really a monumental task. So he did a great job at that. And then was interesting at that point that Oz was still the favored person to go forward with that. So where we're at now, I think, and I'm sure that Leon and the staff is aware of this, is that this debacle that HH has presented to us and this last minute legislative session that we still don't have a clear picture about where money's going and what our assessed evaluations are going to be and what the residential assessment rate is going to do. So we've kind of put everything on hold until we get a clear picture about what's going to happen with that. And I'm also somewhat concerned that, number one, that HH went down in flames, and then they turned around and just administratively did the exact same thing that HH was going to do. And I think they gave us a little bit of reprieve. We kicked up our feet long enough that the fire districts are supposed to get 100% backfill. So we'll see what happens with that, but it doesn't, I won't be surprised if the legislature comes up with some new and improved formula when they reconvene. So we've been very cautious not to overspend and not to make sure that we've committed to anything until we have a clear picture about what's happening with the financial picture as far as assessments go. So our architects have got to the point. So typically if you're building a new building, which I know some of you on the board have been here for construction of the schools, and you get to charrette, and then you get to design drawings, and then you get to schematic design, then you get to blueprints, and then that puts you at shovel ready, and then boom, you're into the architects overseeing their part on the construction piece. So we stopped our architects at blueprints. So we're at the blueprint phase, and we're holding there until we know what's going to happen, probably till March. We told them that we probably don't need them to start engaging in the blueprint design until sometime around February or March when we know what our tax revenue is going to be. So we also have a DOLA grant in, a tier 2 DOLA grant in for about $800,000, which would cover all the rest of the architect fees all the way out. We won't know that until around February 2nd. But we want to make sure that we have a shovel-ready project ready to go, hopefully by next year, so that if there is some new infrastructure plan that comes down, that we can tap into all that. So, our congressional, we're constantly monitoring with our congressional representatives, Hickenlooper and Bennett and Boebert, about what potentially is coming through the pike from legislation on infrastructure. And, hopefully, there will be a little bit of money in the future for infrastructure projects now, whether that's going to be schools or bridges or roads or fire stations. We don't really know, but we are watching that very closely. So we're probably 2 years out from anything happening. We're looking to, if everything goes perfectly, then we'll be probably breaking ground sometime in the spring of 2025. We also are applying for a USDA community facilities loan, which is a super low interest loan that the USDA has money put aside for community facilities, which is a lot, obviously, tremendously cheaper than what's happening with trying to get commercial loans or commercial lending. So I think the interest rate over there was at 2.8%, which is really phenomenal. So there's the last thing I would tell you is that, if you haven't seen the design, which hopefully some of you kind of looked over the article, this is a fire station and an urgent care together. And we've been meeting for the last couple months pretty routinely with the folks from Durango Urgent Care. They've already kind of we're eyeing Bayfield to put a clinic over here. The nice thing is it's kind of a local mom and pop shop. When we talk about Durango Urgent Care, they operate the facility over there on Main Street, and then they operate the Purgatory Clinic and another clinic down in Aztec. So they've been very helpful in giving their input into the architects about potentially designing, the urgent care so it's modernized. And the other thing that is nice about it is since we're building it and going to lease the space to the urgent care, it's being built as a rural health clinic. So there's all kind of HRSA money and there's other federal money that's available to outfit it and potentially even build it, which we're pursuing all that funding. So the other piece of that is there's a community room over there. We looked at the space that's going on over at the Pine River Library, and Brenda says that that community space is getting overutilized there. They're booked solid. So one of the things that's part of the DOLA requirements, if you're applying for the grant money there, is you got to have community space. So our community room over there is designed to either be a banquet hall or it's designed to be a pop-up medical clinic. As many of you know, we did the vaccines over on the east side of the county here. If we ever get in a situation where that comes down again, we'll be able to convert that space very quickly into a public health space. It's also being set up so that it can potentially be an evacuation center. Right now, our admin building, because it has emergency power, serves as the east side of the county's emergency evacuation center, where we could put people, say, that are oxygen dependent and have to be on, have to have electricity to survive. They could be housed in that building. The health department gave us a bunch of money a couple of years ago to make sure that we have sleeping bags and cots and other things for people, oxygen generators and everything to be in there if that were the case. So we're actually designing this space to make sure that we can accommodate people that would be technology dependent, that would be evacuated from a wildland fire. So the architects have done a fantastic job of making that space multi-purpose, so it can serve anywhere from a community meeting room to, like I said, a pop-up health clinic. And then the station is being built to service the community for the next 70 years. The architects, when we were at the architect design or the fire station design conference, said when you're building a fire station now, you're building it for 70 years. So that's the idea, is that, this will hopefully service Bayfield for, if Ezra winds up developing the east side of Bayfield, and certainly what we see going on over here at the Haga property, and then what Corey's doing to the south of us here, that's going to put a lot more people in the community, and that's going to put a little bigger demand on emergency services, and certainly on the school district. So, that's where we're at, and I'm happy to answer any questions, but my board has directed me to do a feasibility study. So we have about 4 different funding options for this thing. Some people say, well, where's the money going that you guys just passed for the operating for the capital thing? Well, that we don't even get to see that money until 2025. So we have a bond that doesn't expire until 2024. So that money doesn't kick in and start, filling up our coffers for capital projects until the spring of 2025. So that bond has to expire before that technically we can activate that particular mill levy. So that's where we're at. Happy to answer any other questions you might have. So Leona, is that what you wanted?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Any questions for Chief Evans?
So what's happening to the other property once you guys move?
Which one? Over here?
Yeah.
So I think that's probably potentially an option for you guys. So, at one time we talked about that being a bus barn. And another time, I've had conversations with Leon about whether we should, whether you could put a welding shop or an automotive shop or some other technology trades thing in that facility. And, whether how long Jay's going to stay in business over there, he's told me that's his last hurrah over there. So as soon as, he's not having fun over there anymore, I'm sure he'll close that up and that property may be available. But initially we had an offer to immediately purchase that facility when we vacated it from one of the people that runs an automotive shop here in Bayfield. And actually that was a swap deal. It's kind of interesting if you're on the other side of 160 and you're in the Bayfield Center, you have an impact fee that you have to pay. As compared to if you're on this side of 160, you don't have an impact fee to pay. So there's a tax savings to be had by just moving across the street or across the highway. I'm not sure that we're going to be timely enough for his move. And then I think there's a little bit of a game change with the sign place coming up for sale. That's right next to him. So, and I don't know if he's looking at that or if that's even a feasible thing. It's been a couple months since we talked to him about potentially swapping properties, but, Jay continuously pesters us about, if we vacate the building, he would like to have it. But again, it's going to be a while. It's not like this is going to happen in January or something like that. But we've got a long way to go on blueprints. We've got a long way to go to make sure our funding's, affordable and we can afford to make payments on what we're building. So
It's
Let's stay in
exciting.
touch about that. Sorry.
I was gonna say, it's exciting about the potential to have urgent care in Bayfield. So
yeah, and one of the things why we partnered with them is that we've been advancing into something called community paramedicine. So if you look at Upper Pines call volume, there's a lot of old timers that say, oh, we should go back to being volunteers. Well, volunteers don't get up at 3:00 in the morning to go put somebody back in bed. That's about 11% of our call volume is picking people up off the toilet, putting them back in bed, helping them back in bed. And obviously those are usually, very senior people in our community that are allowed to stay in their home because we're there to put them back in bed or we're there to pick them back up. Otherwise they'd be over at Junction Creek or some other place. So, and we realize that's going to be a growing piece of what we do. And then the other thing that's out there is that, the hospital is an interesting place to get killed. So there's a lot of people that are kind of looking to shift medicine to more home health care stuff. And the community paramedic program kind of is the gap in between that. So let's just say, for example, that somebody had a urinary tract infection in Forest Lakes. And it was, they call their doctor and they say, oh, we can see you next week. They could call the community paramedic. They would come up there. We're currently operating with telemedicine right now with our iPad. So we can pop on an iPad and have you talk to a real doctor that's in Grand Junction at the ER. And now that's a program that we only have available for people on Medicare because Medicare is the only one that pays for it. But in the future, we know that there's going to be reimbursement that's going to come down for that kind of technology. So we could probably run an iStat. We could probably, draw some blood, run the labs right there on an iStat machine, and then be able to say, okay, yeah, you've got a UTI. And then we call down the Bayfield Pharmacy, get their macrodent in there. Maybe the community paramedic picks that up and runs it back to them. And it saves them anywhere from $7,000 to $3,000 for an emergency room visit, where they were probably going to get seen and kicked out in less than a couple hours. So the telemedicine concept is there's reimbursement coming for that. And we could even potentially telemedicine to the clinic and to some of the mid-levels, either a nurse practitioner or a PA that is functioning under Durango Urgent Care's license. And then they can bill for it and we can do some shared funding out of that. So there's a lot of synergy to go with the clinic, but it'll be a clinic that'll be a little unusual from the standpoint that it will have some outreach. It'll have massive outreach. And that is designed so that, again, we can keep a lot of elderly people in their homes here that normally would not be able to stay at home if they didn't have a public safety person come in to make sure they're okay or check on them or put them back in bed.
very nice.
It is.
So.
How many staff members do you guys have?
So we're budgeted right now at about 31. So we have a rooftop count here for Bayfield so the next increase in our staffing will be a fourth person at this station. So normally there's 3 over here. And then when we get a certain number of rooftops over here, so Bayfield is about a third of our call volume. And then we have 9 districts, so the rest of it's spread out. So it goes Bayfield and then generally Forest Lakes. And then very close between the top end of the lake, which is our District 4, and the narrow gauge district, what we call District 7, which is narrow gauge mobile home park in that area out there. That is real close to our District 4 number wise right now. And then, so with this being a third of our call volume and probably rapidly approaching maybe half of our call volume in Bayfield, to have an engine and an ambulance staff so that when the ambulance is transporting to the hospital, the next ambulance has to come from Forest Lakes or come from our admin building if one of us are on duty over there. So then by having the engine circulating and not leaving the district, it would at least be able to stop the clock if there was something bad happening. So 31 right now. And then, like I said, when we get to a certain number of rooftops, certainly if Ezra's thing goes, we would put an extra person over there. So.
And how many calls do you guys go out on a year?
So we're about, last year was 12 something. So we're down this year. You know, obviously COVID created a lot more sicker people. And that's the other thing about Upper Pines District is that when people call over here, the acuity is very high, meaning that they're sick. You know, people wait to the last minute to call over here just because I think they're a lot hardier over in this neighborhood than they are maybe in the central part of the county. So where there's, you know, probably a little bit more what we would call chronic public inebriates. So to be politically correct on it, but like I said, people over here, when they call, they're generally, it's a heart attack or something very serious. So.
Well, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate you guys coming out and talking to us
Yeah.
about your plan
All right.
and hearing from you directly. That's been great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, anytime. So we love what our partnership and
You want to do a quick question?
Yeah, just
We
one
have
quick
auditors.
question. Currently, do we have students that participate in any sort of extracurricular education with the fire department?
I don't think we have one currently. We did last year.
yeah, we will. So we're so I'll tell you that's probably another important thing for you guys to know about. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say it, but so we got a workforce development grant, about $500,000 for the next 3 years to train EMTs. So the state of Colorado will not certify an EMT until they're 18 years old. However, go right across the border to New Mexico, they'll certify them at 16. Virginia is certified at 16. Pennsylvania certifies at 16. Matter of fact, Virginia's been certifying EMTs at 16 for almost 40 years. So we're trying to get the law changed here in Colorado, or it's not even a law, it's a rulemaking at the state health department that would allow EMTs to be certified at age 16. So our summer class, we had one homeschool student, we had one Bayfield student, and we had one Durango High student. So we're pulling students from not only Bayfield High School, but we're getting them from Big Picture, we're getting them from Animas, we're getting them from Durango High School. And, you know, it's ideally, hopefully we keep some of these kids in the community. So the ones that we've had in the past, I think many of you, you know, if you teach over at the high school, you probably had to tolerate Caleb Heck for a while. And Caleb is one of our newer paramedics. He just came out of paramedic school a year ago, but he's a Bayfield High School graduate. And we've got Jake Brandon, who's also Bayfield High School graduate, is on the baseball team. And now I think is also coaching over there part-time the JV team. And he's one of our full-time firefighters. So we're batting about 500 coming out of the Bayfield High School. And, you know, we've had 2 that didn't kind of make it through their probationary period, but we're always working with the high school to do an internship program where we take one student and then they're mentored by one of our fire captains. It's typically been Vito Ciccarelli, and Caleb has usually helped him out with that. So the class is open to the next one starts here in January, and it's in the evening, so it's open to any high school student, especially any senior. But here's the other catch-22 on that is that while the state won't certify them at 16, the national certification will certify them at 16. So let's say a Bayfield High School student who gets certified at 16, maybe they volunteer in a couple places, then they decide to go to college. there's 36 college EMS programs that are affiliated in the United States. So for example, George Washington University is probably the most in-depth one. They have their own ambulance, they have a supervisor. If the students who are EMTs and paramedics volunteer to cover the ambulance, and again, this is in downtown DC, if they volunteer to cover the ambulance, they get a tuition break. And then places like Stanford also have a collegiate EMS program where the students are manning with AEDs and the EMTs are manning the sports arenas. And that saves them money from the standby situation. And in return, they get a discount on their tuition at Stanford.
Nice.
So like I said, 36 college programs around the country that would be helpful for them. And then of course, a lot of the students that we're getting that are coming into the EMT program that are high schoolers are typically headed to medical school. So Bailey Noonan, who's Dan Noonan's granddaughter, and I think you know the Noonans because one of them used to teach over here, right? Or is still teaching over here. So Bailey was in our program this summer. She's a high school senior now over at Durango High School. She has plans to be a neurologist. So great experience for her to be out in the field and see what's going on with head trauma and those kind of things. Kind of gets to see the front end of it before she gets to see the back end of it to fix it. So, and Bailey was an excellent student. She was awesome.
I really like to see that program grow, and as well as when you guys expand, there's going to be more opportunities out there for younger students to get kind of a step ahead from everybody else. I think that'd be great.
Yeah, and I think it's important too to keep local kids here if we can, and not let them run away.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people that come here that we hire from outside the region, if they don't have an anchor here, where they have family in Bayfield or family in the Pine River Valley or family in Durango, it's hard to keep them here. So if we're getting them out of the high school, generally they're going to have family here and they're going to want to stay. So.
Perfect.
Chief Evans, thank you.
Thank you again. We
Yeah,
appreciate
absolutely.
your time.
So,
Thank you.
all right.
Okay, so we need to go back to our board member reports and finish those first, or do we need to go straight to district reports because we have the auditors on?
I think we can do board member reports
Board member
real quick and then jump into the auditor.
Okay, so,
Ms. Lassiter's been talking to the auditors. so-
okay, and they're okay?
They're standing by, they're in the waiting room.
Okay. So we'll go through board member reports and we'll start with Mr. Talbot. Do you have anything from policy tonight for us to share?
Nothing on policy, thank you.
Okay. And Ms. Orndorff, do you have anything for finance
No,
to
we
share?
meet, our first meeting is January 16th.
Okay,
So we should have something in January.
sounds good. Mr. Turner?
Yeah, I'm gonna slow it down.
Okay.
So, I had a chance to go to the CASB December conference. And thank you guys very, very much for that opportunity. As Superintendent Henhart mentioned, I was elected to the CASB Board of Directors. I'm working on a plan to get districts working together, and that's my goal with that is to help CASB maintain their membership as of right now. Moving forward, as far as legislative stuff goes, this last the special session that they had in regards to HH failing, there's a lot of stuff going around right now, and most of it, it's too soon on most of it to actually report on. The normal legislative sessions start in January, and I will be doing regular reports.
Sounds good. Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Turner? Debbie, anything from both sides?
The only, just one real quick thing, we have the, Montezuma County High School, was denied their exit from San Juan Dosis. They are going to appeal that, which they're probably gonna get denied. So, the superintendents from all of the districts are gonna work together to find a happy medium where we can all move forward as, a collaborative for the San Juan Dosis to work together and move forward, since they were denied and they can't exit and be their own administrative unit. So that's kind of where it's at. My meeting's tomorrow, so I don't really have a lot, but that was the only big thing.
Okay.
So that's what their plan was, to exit, and then they were gonna run the
They
program
wanted-
internally?
Yep, they wanted to exit and be their own administrative unit, and so they have to appeal to the state in order to do that. This has been a process for a while, a little bit now.
About 6 months.
Yeah, and so they were denied by the CBE, and so their superintendent, his intention is to appeal the decision, but he can't really put any more information into their decision to appeal. They just have, his appeal is basically for them to look at it again. And so, Mr. Hanhart expressed in the meeting that he's never seen anybody who appeals ever get granted their wish, so it's pretty much not going to. But I went to a meeting with all of the superintendents, and they expressed their, willingness to move forward past, because it kind of causes a rift when someone wants to leave the San Juan BOCES and because, there's eight districts, and one leaves, 7 districts have to split the pot, what's left, and so
Increases their financial
it
burden.
would increase our financial burden, and it would also cut some of the San Juan BOCES staff as well, because they can't sustain that many people. Montezuma is our biggest
It
district
is now.
in the San Juan BOCES, so.
So I'm guessing that this was a discussion previously, and you guys decided to stay in and
Yeah,
As a district,
as a district.
yeah,
So-
we never had plans to leave the San Juan BOCES, so.
it was just Montezuma Cortez School
Yeah,
District.
Montezuma was-
And they would have to set up their entire administrative unit around special education and services. And so they applied
Yep.
for their own administrative unit, which would remove them from San Juan BOCES.
Right.
And the state denied their application and their request. And now, in the last conversation I had with the superintendent, I'm not 100% sure that they will continue with the appeal.
Oh, okay.
But there were a couple of us, myself and Ty Gray from Dove Creek, that were assigned to be the mediators to try to get everybody back together, knowing
Yeah.
that this is how we move forward. We're going to move forward with all the districts. The appeal failed, and now we move forward. And there's some repair that needs to be done there, and in between some of the BOCES staff and some of the Montezuma Cortez staff. And so that's what we're going to work on to make sure, because the financial burden to be able to handle all of the services for special education internally for the rest of us that are a little bit smaller is huge.
It is. It would
And
increase our fees.
Is Durango in?
Durango is not.
Durango is not in our district. Yeah.
Durango came out 5 or 6,
Yeah, I was gonna
maybe
say
more
it's
years
been-
ago,
It's been a while.
and they do have their own.
And they were granted,
They were.
obviously.
Yeah, because they could prove, well, in order to remove yourself from San Juan BOCES, you have to prove that you can sustain your own district and that the remaining districts will be able to sustain themselves if you pull out of the BOCES. And so Montezuma was not able to prove that they could sustain themselves, nor could the other 7 districts. And yeah, so that's basically where it's at. They're not able to pull out, and so now we have to figure out a way to make it all work together to come back as the 8 districts that are in the San Juan BOCES. So yeah, but we have our meeting tomorrow, so. That's all I have for tonight.
Any other questions? All right, I don't have anything for SAC and DAC this evening. We haven't had any meetings, so no reports there. All right, our next report is the district report from the finance department, and I believe we have the auditor who's going to join our meeting.
We do, and we have Ms. Lassiter here to answer any questions that we have as well. So
Thank you.
they won't be able to see us, but we'll be able to see them.
Do they have audio though?
Yes.
Hi, Stephanie.
Hello.
Thanks so much. So you won't have video, but you have audio. Okay. And okay. So thanks for, I'm actually gonna just turn it over to you. We have Stephanie and Matt joining us from Reuben Brown, and appreciate you guys standing by for the delay. Go
The
ahead,
floor is
please.
yours.
That'd be great. We can see it here on our computers.
Matt, everybody has the draft in front of them, so.
No.
None. None.
No.
Matt, are you on page 60 or page 60 out of 76? Thank you.
Yes, sir. Unearned revenue, and I read the definition, but what is that actually as far as the dollar amount? On page 67 of 76, it shows $10,146 of unearned revenue. What is that money? Do we know? Maybe that's more for our.
You want to jump in real quick, John? Or you?
That was the school health professional grant. And we changed personnel under, really there was a change in personnel and timing, and one person left, another person came on, and essentially what it is we didn't expend quite the amount of money that they sent us. So we took it out of revenue and put it in unearned revenue.
Okay,
So that's,
that makes sense. Thank you.
Well, a couple quick questions, maybe John can answer. I wrote down under general revenue that the general revenue total was down. Can you explain that?
I would suspect, I'd have to look at some detail. But I would think that has to do with some of the COVID and ESSER funding being absorbed in prior years and not very much going on in fiscal 23. I mean, I can dig into the numbers in detail, but that's what I suspect.
Okay, and then I had expenses were significantly up in that.
What page are you on,
yeah.
Justin?
Probably.
The MDNA.
And then one last question. I saw you guys had to make an amendment on the food service fund. So where did that money come from when you made that amendment and had to put more money in there?
I'm sorry, we made an amendment on the food service fund?
Uh-huh.
I'm not exactly,
Yeah.
oh. That was probably leftover seamless summer revenue from the prior year. And so we deferred it at the end of fiscal '22 and recognized it in fiscal '23.
And that's when you moved.
That's probably what you're seeing there.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Go ahead, Matt.
So from a board standpoint, will the finance department report back to the board on the control process that's going to be put in place to handle that? Or will you give that back to us in a superintendent report?
It'll actually be in the single audit in this, there's a action plan that is included.
Okay,
They'll post a finding and then we will give them an action plan. So for the first finding where Julie does a lot of the, she does the vast majority of the review and getting to see who is an eligible student, that just needs, they're saying that it can't be a lone ranger kind of deal. She can't be the sole person responsible because something might fall through the cracks. Now, you know, Julie, it's
right.
nothing really falls through the cracks.
Yeah.
But, you know, they're recommending that someone else, and I don't know if it's Chantel, I don't know if it's the superintendent, I mean, the assistant superintendent, someone other than Julie be looking at those, at the eligibility and things like that. And it's basically, as she said, it doesn't need to be 100% review. It, you know, can be a sampling, but not only do they want that to be done, but it should be documented that it be done. The second recommendation was when Julie submits, you know, they do lunch counts and she submits those lunch counts that will be reimbursed by the state or the feds. She does those lunch counts and submits it electronically, and she gives me those reports, and I take a look. But, you know, I don't go back and say, Julie, how'd you make these counts? You know, again, Julie's got pretty good systems in place. So when she submits those reports for reimbursement, and there's nothing really out of whack, I haven't been going over and saying, hey, Julie, how did you come up with these numbers? So,
I
you
think
know,
what I'm just asking though is that the action plan will be brought back.
and so there will be an action plan on that as well.
Okay,
So I'm just trying to explain
gotcha.
what is perceived as going on and a shortcoming, and then that we have to come up with an action plan to address that perceived shortcoming.
Okay, okay,
And I'll either bring in the superintendent's report or we'll have a finance report from,
okay,
It'll actually be in the final audit.
okay. Thank you. Okay, thank you.
None, sorry. You guys can't hear our heads rattle, I'm sorry.
There's also a bit of a delay.
There is, yeah.
Go ahead, Matt.
No other questions?
I think we're good.
All right, thank you for your time. And thank you for the presentation and the ability to ask questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt and
Thanks,
Stephanie.
Matt.
Thank
Stephanie.
you. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Annalise.
Thanks both of you
And
for your
thank you,
work.
John. Yeah.
Thanks, John.
Okay, so moving over to the consent agenda, we have the personnel agenda and the minutes from November 28th. Does anyone have any questions on the consent agenda?
I would, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
You'll notice on the consent agenda underneath the personnel agenda, I believe that we have selected an interim assistant principal for Bayfield Intermediate School. And I had the opportunity to visit with Carl Herr the other day, but somebody who brings some great experience and some steady leadership to that position. I think we're very, very fortunate that Carl was willing to come out of retirement once again. I joked with him and told him he's awful at retirement. But I'm really excited to have him come back and join the team in the interim role as the assistant principal at the intermediate school. And also, you'll see a name on here that was part of our team previously coming back, and that would be in Ms. Daigle as our kindergarten teacher to finish out the year in our kindergarten position. So we're excited to have both of them.
Well, welcome back, Ms. Daigle and Mr. Hare.
Herr.
Herr.
So are we in discussion or where are we at right now?
We're in the
Personnel.
consent agenda, so we're under approval of the personnel agenda and approval of minutes, November 28th, 2023.
So yes, you have anything?
So.
Well,
you
so
have-
my question is the individuals that are looking to be hired, are they certified, qualified? I mean, you're putting it in front of me, and so I want to know, were they certified, qualified, and were they best candidates for the position?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thoughts?
Not for me.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
I will second that.
Brooke?
Molly,
Aye.
Rebecca,
Aye.
Justin,
Aye.
Matt,
Aye.
Debbie.
Aye.
Consent agenda carries 5-0. Thank you.
Okay, moving to discussion items. The first item up for discussion is Student Board of Education Representative. This is the first time that it's been on our agenda, and this is something that the board requested Mr. Hanhart add to the agenda. I can take it from there, or would you like me to go straight to the board?
No, I'll take it quickly.
Okay.
This has been an ongoing conversation with a couple of requests to discuss a student representative, and I know that the initial conversation began prior to my superintendency, but when two of the board members, Mr. Turner and Ms. Parnell, attended a session at CASB a few years back on student members to the board, and we wanted to bring it as a discussion item, and the recommendation that I had as we brought it as a discussion item, that it read as a student representative to the board. But I know that Mr. Turner and Ms. Parnell wanted to visit about that, so we brought it.
So, one of the things here, student representative is not going to be able to vote. Only the 5 of us are allowed to make the decision. I feel like it's a really, really good idea. We've discussed things in the past that it sure would be nice to have some student input on. The principals do an amazing job bringing as much of the student input as possible, but it's a little different coming from the student themselves. So that's my thought on it, and I feel like we need to move forward with this without digging too far into policy. The deeper we go with it, the more policy has to be changed, and I don't want to miss something. And have to change a whole bunch of policy because we're making this decision.
And so to add on to that, the difference would be if we have a representative to the board, minimal change would need made to policy. If we have a student representative on the board, we have to discuss more about policy changes and what that would entail. So it requires a heavier administrative load to make that change. And to have a student representative to the board, they would be a non-voting member. I've done some research. Typically, those are 1-year terms, and it's usually a senior. We could also do a junior and talk about doing a 2-year term. So there's different ways we can structure that. But just remembering, my personal preference would be student representative to the board rather than on the board. I think that there's a few more to add before I don't want to go on.
So the big thing here is I have reached out to another district that has a representative to their board. And I'm waiting to see how we would select a student member, just to see how that stuff would go. And I'll have more information on it, hopefully at the next meeting.
My thoughts around it would be that the goal of bringing the student representative to the board would be to help student members build collaborative relationships with their adult colleagues and meaningfully represent the voices of their student peers. So when we're making decisions, I think a lot, we're a school board, but do we have a pulse on our student body and how those decisions impact them? Do students have a direct and open way to communicate their wants and needs to the board? And does that input directly inform our decision-making process? And then I also think about it from the student perspective and the experience that they would be able to get from serving as a representative to the board. And I think that would be a really empowering leadership experience for students that could increase motivation and engagement. That would help them advocate for causes that they're passionate about. I think it's a great resume builder when they apply to whatever their next steps in life are. And it helps them learn to represent the voices of different groups. So those were my reasons for wanting to have a student representative to the board. And to Mr. Hanhart's point, when I was up at CASB a few years ago, they had a student strand that we got to listen to, and they were very engaged. I think you were also, yeah. They were very engaged, very excited about what they were doing. And that also made me think, we've talked a lot in DAC about getting the word out about what our district is doing. And we talked a little bit about that in our retreat also. And I think it would be one more avenue to kind of help share from a student perspective in the building, what is happening at the board level? How does that impact students? What are the positives? What are the negatives? I think it's another avenue for communication. And I like it.
And I feel like, just in talking with a couple of people that had boards that had students, they pretty much were recommended by teachers to be able to apply, I guess, or interview for the position, and then the board would select the one. Is that how it typically
is what I would ask the board is to allow me and our team to put together a rigorous application process.
Yeah.
And to put that process together. There are other school districts and that's something that I need to bring to the board table and working with Ms. McGlinnis and putting that together, and I'm happy to get that done. My recommendation would be that they don't start until August of 24 or 25, that it work from a July 1 to a June 30th year. So we really reach out to the junior class if the board approves this and we move forward.
Yeah.
We can continue it as a discussion item, or we can bring it back as an action item at the next meeting, and then we move forward with the plan to add a student representative to the board for the 24-25 school year.
I'm okay with that.
That would be my recommendation, but
I agree. Because you do need a little time, especially we're in December.
Yeah.
I mean, we
Yeah.
can't throw someone on
Agreed.
who's gonna, and as far as I kind of feel like, maybe a senior in a 1-year position, just so that we can get different students with, every student's different. They're gonna have different opinions and different outreaches. I think one student with a year
Yes.
and then pick another one would be my recommendation, but.
I have the thought also when I was thinking about a junior or senior and the college application process, and if they were going to use this as a resume builder, do they need to have that 1 year experience before they start applying to their next steps in life? So are we looking more at a junior so that they can really have that experience under their belt when they're applying to a, you know, if they decide to go to college and use that, or even a job, you know, either one, whatever it is. But, and I think we can be a point of recommendation for them also.
So would this just be one student
Yes.
represented?
One student each year.
Okay, because I was like, it would be kind of nice to have a middle schooler and a high schooler, because then they could potentially move up. When you were talking about job,
Yeah,
for
yeah,
experience for jobs and stuff,
yeah.
I write down pros or insight into schools from the student perspective, a young mind's perspective. Great experience. Cons, it is subjective to that single student. And they can't access everything. Like they wouldn't be accessing some of the information
No,
that we
absolutely
have.
not.
So
Yeah.
obviously there's that buffer
Limited
part of it.
perspective.
So, but I think it's great. I think we should have, I mean.
Yeah.
I just think it's a win-win.
Yeah,
So my thought on a middle school student is that's gonna be really, really hard to convince a parent to show up to board meetings.
Well, they might have to be bringing a junior who doesn't drive anyway, so. Not everybody has
And
license.
that's,
Oh, that's a good point though. Will they get credits? Will a student get any credits in school?
I don't think there'll be any
Participation?
credit for their participation on their board. I think it'll be more experiential use than anything else.
Tying it to a credit would be extremely dangerous because it's evaluative in terms of grades, et cetera. And
Yeah,
there's, I mean, sitting at this table, there's one person with a teacher certification that could be able to give that grade. And I'm not sure I'm comfortable asking them for their honest, I mean, if we want
Yeah.
honest feedback
Yeah,
oh, yeah.
from a
that's
student
true.
on what's going on, I think tying
was
it to
just
credit
thinking,
would be
The
would be pretty
internship
dangerous.
Or the work study hours, like, hey, you can leave an hour early from school because you're participating in their meetings for 2 hours. But, yeah, that's true, the grading part.
Justin, do you have any thoughts?
New water for me to tread on that. I actually haven't thought deeply in it. I have a few concerns, but I'm willing to give it a try as long as we're not tied to continuing this, making sure that there's still availability to have conversation down the road if we don't feel comfortable with it. I have concerns about a student being challenged with their peers to make decisions, whether they're right or wrong. And maybe that student is pushed into that direction to be with that group. So you see what I'm saying? I cautious us. I caution us
I
on
thought
that.
of that too, like, what if they would get teased in school for being like a representative on the board, but they wouldn't be voting on there wouldn't be decisions
Right.
from.
Right.
I would say also if it wasn't working out for them at any time, we'd have enough flexibility for them to
Oh,
say,
sure.
you know what, this is really causing me angst at school. This isn't the right position. I mean, I don't think we'd be tying them into anything contractually for a year to
No,
say you must.
definitely not.
I mean, I'm assuming that would be,
Mm,
we would have enough flexibility within our board to,
Or even us, if we did feel comfortable moving forward, having the ability to say, this isn't working like we thought it would. It's maybe causing a little bit more rift, or we're
I
not
would
getting
like
the
to-
feedback we thought we wanted.
yeah, I would like some sort of commitment that we're gonna make to that student so they don't feel like they're walking into something thinking that they're able to have a benefit from it, or, they're giving up so many evenings and 2 months into it, we're like, you know what, see you later. Like, I would like some sort of commitment to them, at least a school year, I think is a fair.
Yeah.
I mean, unless there's something, confidentiality issue or something big, like a big disruption with your.
What districts that are near us that have those?
Durango,
Just Durango?
that are near us.
we could go
Can
to
I,
the
do
board.
you mind if I address something?
Yeah.
Because I 100% agree with your statement, and here's, so let me express, I have the same concern, in representing the entire student body.
Right.
Which is what I feel like you were saying is, one student comes in representing their portion of the student body is easy to do, or their personal opinion, but representing the entire student body is tough. And that's a tough piece. So is what I would ask is, and I was going to ask you for the next steps and the board's direction on this, but let me flip that script a little bit. What if I were to put together kind of that job description, what this looks like, along with a sample application? Because there's some other pieces that we're missing. If you have a student that's the representative to the board and you run into some major discipline issues, which is kind of where you guys started talking, then we're going to have a different conversation. And I need to really dig deep. The reason that we put it on here on the agenda is, again, 2 board members asked, and really to start fleshing out some of those pieces. But I could put that document together if the board is comfortable that this isn't something that we're going to do until the 24-25 school year. That buys us a little bit of time to put some of that together. I can set that back in front of you and let you look at it, which gives us just a little more structured pieces in the conversation. If you're comfortable with that, it may not be at the January 9th meeting, but I will have it to you. So if you're comfortable, and then we can look at all those pieces. And I really want to involve some folks from the high school in that conversation too. Another piece that I would bring up, and as you talk juniors versus seniors, there's going to be years, and we have to look future focused right down the road if we make this decision now. There's going to be years that you honestly will have nobody apply. And especially if we limit it to just seniors, you will have nobody apply. Seniors love to hit that moment sometimes that their mind has moved on.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
So I would, if you'll let me put together a draft, I'll bring it to you and you guys can pick it apart and say yay or nay.
I think it would be,
No, go ahead.
I think it would be nice to have like an alternate or backup, because if for some reason, let's say something comes up and the student who's selected is just not
Yeah.
working,
Yeah.
then we're not going, oh, I guess we wait until next year now to
Yeah.
get another person. We could kind of have like
Yeah.
that alternate and the backup, that if there's more than one student interested in applying. But yeah, good point on the seniors. I have a senior and
Yeah, sometimes they're just all about
The check. I'm just curious, and I may have to look at some during those board meetings. I'm just curious to see how it pieces into their board meetings
I don't
And how-
know where they can.
and how they,
Clear on my-
just how they interact during board meetings.
And I like the idea of what you said of getting the high school team involved and getting some feedback from them and what they think, and I think that'd be helpful.
Well, and we've been talking about this for the last 2 years. There's no reason that we need to nail this down over the course of a month.
That's true.
But if the board's direction is for me to move forward with it, I'm happy to do that.
Any opposition to that plan? Sounds like that's our next step.
Okay.
Thank you.
You bet.
Next item up for discussion is the Pediatric Partners MOU. We discussed this, not last board meeting, but the one prior to that. And we wanted to bring it back so that it was also in front of our new board members.
So I've attached the MOU proposal under the discussion item. And again, like Ms. Parnell said, we did discuss this at a previous board meeting. However, we thought it was best to sit on it just a little bit and then come back and bring it back as a discussion item and as a action item so that we had time to amply discuss it with new board members. The biggest change for those of you that, did both of you watch that or see that board meeting?
Here. Yeah.
Okay. So I'll just read, I'm not going to go deep into it. I'll reiterate what the biggest change is up until this point, Pediatric Partners has not paid any financial compensation to the district for their use. And it was rent-free because Pediatric Partners is considered a school-based health program. For their grants and for the funding, it does have to list rent-free. So the alternative was to charge them for utilities. To nail down in that building exactly what each individual pays for utilities is tough. So some, napkin math, we came up to $400 a month. They take care of their own custodial services. We do not. We maintain the common spaces, but it gives in my opinion, it gives some skin in the game for Pediatric Partners, which is at the end of the day, a for-profit organization in our facilities that was not paying any financial contribution to the district.
So going back, I need educated on that for the grant. Educate me on how that grant works.
School-based health centers, it's not a grant through us. They apply for the grant themselves through whether it's the Department of Health or any of the other grant-funded operations. And they have to be able to show that they have a rent-free facility in a school or within a school property to be able to collect the school-based health funding. And is what the grant does for us or for the community is provides specialists that can offer and for us a rural community. At that meeting, it was, I can't remember her name. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Lauren Lacroix, who was brought in, and she is grant funded. Her position is grant funded to be able to work with youth in the community.
So they are not a not-profit or a non-profit, right?
Correct.
So they do make money.
Yes.
Correct.
We've actually been talking about this for a couple of years, I feel like, about them paying because they weren't paying anything and they are for profit.
Right. So if an individual was to go in there, they get service. Either they pay their bill or they get billed to the insurance and then they get recouped the money.
Correct.
I know, I think
That's
every
hard.
Bayfield School District student should get a free well check if they're getting free. But then obviously there's families using their service who don't even have kids in school yet, which is huge because you don't have to drive to Durango. I mean, taking a baby the whole way into town just for their checkup is like, not the easiest thing to do in one.
And they do work with our behavioral health, with our counselors and our other teams with some of the behavioral health pieces, which are at no charge. But you're right, if there's an appointment and somebody goes in there, either insurance is billed or, they're billed.
Right.
The behavioral health appointments are at no charge? Like,
If they
If
come
it's
in with
through
the
the
counseling
school,
team, if we have
yeah.
a crisis or something like that, yes.
Well, it's-
Well, and just to add on to what you said, it's pretty amazing to go into the clinic, get service, and still be able to get your kid back within an hour's time. And they're not missing school.
Or go on Fridays when there's no school. Because they're open on Fridays.
Well,
It's nice.
Yeah, Fridays back up pretty quick.
Right.
Because nobody's in school.
And I agree with you. I'm just having a hard time knowing that taxpayer funds and dollars were used to build this facility. We're still using it to maintain it, yet we're not recouping those costs.
And so again, I'm not shirking the blame. The agreement was made when Pediatric Partners moved in far before I came here.
Right.
However, do I think that they're a benefit to the community? My answer is yes. I would say they're a benefit to the community. One of the things that I was concerned about, and that the board was concerned about, is there was no buy-in or no skin in the game from them.
Yeah.
So we came back to this point to come up with an agreement of something. We didn't build the building, and I will tell you that everything they changed in that building right now, we did build the building, but it's been a long time ago,
Sure.
is on them. They took a wall down to put in another door, and that is something that the district did not contribute any funds to. At very least, my opinion is it's fair at very least that they're paying their utilities. And Dr. Fraley, who is the CEO of Pediatric Partners, agreed. She understood. There was no argument whenever I said, look, we have to do something different here.
Well, we have the pediatrician, soon to be urgent care. That'll attract more families to the school district to live in the town. And then the houses will be in the property taxes. So probably, I thought it was amazing when they opened just because, like I said, if not, you're running at least to Three Springs is the closest pediatrician's office.
And over the last 2 years, frankly, at one point in time, every organization that was using property in the building after we moved everybody to the primary school and the new intermediate school, over the last 2 years, they're all now paying. At the beginning, none of them were.
When I first started on the board, nobody was paying anything.
And it was, I agree with you, and my comment several times, Mr. Talbot, has been, we're happy to work with you and happy to have community partners. However, we won't do it on the backs of the kids that are in the school buildings.
Right, because I'm sure there's a tree house, I'm sure they pay something, and I don't
They
even
do
know
now.
what it is, but I'm sure they pay something.
As does Pine River Shares, as does now PCC. And this is the last one that was not paying in, so.
So
We've updated all of the MOUs.
Yeah.
are they all equal across the board?
No,
Why are they not?
they don't use the same amount of space and they all have different things to work with in their grants to be able to do it.
They're all community partners,
Partners,
yes. But they all have different roles in the community, so to speak, I guess.
Because if we charged pediatric partners rent,
You
then they
can't.
couldn't.
Correct.
the
It could not be a
school-based
It
school-based
cannot be a
center.
school-based health center.
Huh.
And I feel like.
I have to be in the school without paying rent, but they can pay utilities.
Like, for example, in Durango, they are on campus.
Yeah, aren't they in during
They
the high
are.
school?
They are,
Durango
they're
High School.
adjacent, you can literally walk them.
But students still aren't going without, well, maybe the seniors could go.
You have to be 18 to be.
Yeah. And then they could go, but otherwise. family only. Okay.
So our students do get some free benefits out of this?
Yes.
In the partnership, the community partnership.
Is this a one-year agreement?
Yeah,
January 1st to 2024.
we wrote this one for 2 years. We're trying to get them all on the same rotation, which has been a chore.
Oh, so 2024 to
2025.
2025. But we do have the ability with 30-day.
We absolutely do.
Okay.
And you bring up a good point that is a lot bigger conversation that will become part of, if we have a work session, is we have to look at the expenses of that building.
Right.
I mean, and I've said this very clearly. The day may come that that building gets to a point that the repair level and the taxpayer investment in that building, we have to have a conversation about, can we continue to house anything?
Right.
And that day may come. We all know the age and the condition. But our priority, again, is the buildings that our students are in, is the number one priority for me at least.
Right. And that's where I 100% agree. And I hope that if there's anything major that goes wrong in that building, with the agreement that we have, those tenants address that with their own funds and don't ask the school for assistance. I mean, we've got bigger issues in front of us, i.e. the mid-school, you're just talking about that. I'm thinking of, we need to start gathering some funds to get some stuff going. And to have somebody rent a large building for $400, I'm in,
Agreed.
so.
Anything else regarding discussion around the MOU for pediatric partners?
No.
No, okay. We'll move on to discussing the financial audit next. We just have a presentation from Ruben Brown. Do you guys have any further thoughts, questions? We have Mr. Moore, Lassiter here.
Thank you guys for your time doing all that, for sure. There's a lot of work. There's a lot of learning that I need to do because it's a little bit different
It's
budget than I've seen.
Yeah.
But I tried to dig into what I didn't know, and thank you.
I'd like to bring up 2 points as you guys discussed this before we get to an action item. First, I was going to say the same thing. The work that Mr. Moore has done over time, and now with Ms. Laster on board, her jumping right in to this conversation has been tremendous. And thank you both. And you heard that from Ruben Brown. Very happy with our team. And there are conversations in many districts that they're not happy with the team. So it's a process. I mean, the audit is a process. They come and sit and we'll go through things. They send a list of everything that they want to see, and everybody has to send it back and forth. It's not a one and done situation. So thank you both for that. The second one is, it's my understanding, and I'm going to let Mr. Moore correct me as I know he will. We should not be in a single audit situation moving forward for the most part. It is based on $750,000 of federal funds. And that is because of ESSER money. That was all results of COVID, is why we've been in the single audit situation. So the size of our district, having 750,000 in federal funds in the future is not real likely.
Well,
Until Mr. Moore corrects me, so I told you.
the, one thing that's going on with the FF is that, the state, and through some things they're trying to do in, nutrition, they are definitely trying to get more of the meals paid for, not by that separate tax, but through federal funding and qualifying more kids through various means. And if those meals are paid for by the feds, then they will, those will still be considered federal funds. Now, will we reach the 750 threshold in the future? Before I came, we weren't there. Then COVID hit, we got all those other funds. So in the past, we were never really there, but other school districts in our neighborhood were, because they had more what we call title funds. But it could happen that because of food funding, we may still get a sizable portion. But this thing has just been a moving target. The free food implementation by the state has been really a mobile target. The other thing, the other variable, and is that the $750,000 threshold has been there for, I don't know, maybe since federal fund auditing started. It's been for years. It's never been indexed. There is some discussion about raising it to $1 million. So that there is that's out there that might kick us out of single audit. Or if we get less than 750,000, that might kick us out of single audit. But I guess I would have a better idea of where we're at probably after the end of December. See how much of the food money we get, because right now we're getting food money both from state and federal sources. And we still get the title funds. If you look at the CFA, you can see where, but I just don't believe we're going to get as much federal as we have in the past. And now I've probably talked more than Mr. Hanhart wanted me to. So.
How does the state determine how much, how many funds we get for that food service program?
That is based on some of the enrollment of students who qualify through what Julie does.
Sure.
And it's
free and reduced kids get a certain, we get a certain amount for those kids and a different amount for your regular student
they're
body.
paid for by the federal money and then the state.
That's
money,
what I'm asking.
Right.
Yeah,
Like the state still looks good.
I'm not exactly certain how the proportions are determined.
Gotcha. I was just curious. So you really have no idea how much money's coming down the pipe till you actually get it.
Well, food service has been difficult to budget for the past few years.
Right.
Just because of COVID, and then the feds came in with free food, and then, and the Fed reimbursement rate was higher than the state reimbursement rate, and et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
It's just been, and, so kids didn't have to buy meals, and, it's been an interesting challenge.
Gotcha.
Are enough families filling out the paperwork to see if they qualify?
Especially
think-
now that they all get free lunch.
Well,
Actually,
people
we
don't
had
wanna
a-
put their income out
We had
there.
an increase in the amount of people that filled it out.
I
We
think
pressured pretty hard to get those done,
That's
and
good. It's always been known. Yeah, that's-
Julie could speak to that better than probably anyone in this room, but
Yeah.
she pushes pretty hard to get that paperwork completed.
Bye.
thank you.
I just wish there was a way that people could do it, you know, I understand why people don't want to put their income on, you know, especially if it's just, or if it fluctuates. You know, so many people have jobs where they're seasonal or they're, you know, self-employed, and then it's like, well, how do you, if you don't really know, so. I don't know. But good job, Julie, for getting on
Julie's
Yeah,
amazing.
Julie is
Yeah.
an asset to the district in terms of nutrition and running that whole program.
So if we don't have a single audit,
The
how
single,
frequent?
we have to be audited every year by law.
Okay.
So we'll still have the audit. The piece that always takes more time and more pieces is that single audit. The federal fund's over $750,000.
Okay.
And that's where the findings a lot of times come out, and we won't have to go through the single audit piece.
Well, and just to expand on that a little bit, the 750 threshold is the total of federal funds. And then what the auditors will do is they'll say, okay, Title I was this much, Title VI was this much. Oh, food service was the majority this year. We're gonna audit that one.
Pick on that one.
So they pretty much, they might, you know, when we had some more ESSER funds, they might have audited one or two based on specific program audit requirements put out by the feds. But this time it was, no, the federal or the food service fund was, the federal funding into the food service was, you know, larger proportionately to the others. And that's the only one they audited this year.
Any other questions, discussion, thoughts? Okay, we'll move into action items. We'll start with approval of the financial audit. I'll ask one final time if there's any other discussion around the financial audit.
If I could make one suggestion when you're approving this, because as you saw, it was a draft and we were expecting some
Yes.
more things. You might want to approve it subject to, or,
With the
you know,
exception.
realizing that there's more stuff gonna come into that audit report.
We're approving a draft of the financial audit.
Well, I don't know if you approve a draft or just approve it knowing that, you know, there's not gonna be substantive changes to it.
Should we be tabling it until it's finalized?
That would be difficult because we have to file it with the state
You have to approve it.
by
Yeah.
12/31.
And we don't have another meeting in December.
And quite frankly, there's not gonna, the things he talked about is, hey, we're gonna have a finding. You guys gotta come up with a action plan. We're gonna come up with an action plan. It's not a difficult thing to come up with an action plan to include. So
So when will the action plan be brought back to the board? On the
I'll bring it
January?
in January.
So we'll approve the financial audit, knowing that we'll see the action plan after.
yeah, we can provide the action plan, you know, as soon as we get a better draft of the findings.
Okay,
But we can do that because the action plan will be available, you know, soon.
Your motion should be stated as I move to approve the financial audit as presented.
I'll make a motion. Can I say that now?
yeah, I just say, is there a motion to adopt, or is there a motion to approve the financial audit?
Wait, repeat what you said, Leon?
As presented. I
As presented.
move to approve the financial audit as
I'll
presented.
make a motion to approve the financial audit as presented.
I'll second.
Brooke, would you call the question?
Molly.
Aye.
Rebecca.
Aye.
Justin.
Aye.
Matt.
Aye.
Debbie.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move into the action item approval of the Pediatric Partners MOU. Is there any final item for discussion there before we move into action? Okay, would someone like to make a motion to approve the Pediatric Partners MOU?
I'll make a motion that we approve the pediatric partners MOU as presented.
I'll second.
Molly,
Aye.
Rebecca,
Aye.
Justin,
Aye.
Matt,
Aye.
Debbie.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Thank you.
Our next board meeting will be scheduled for January 9th, 2023. Are there any objections to adjournment?
One quick one. So we approved the financial audit. So if there's any financial changes, we will see that again. Is that
You're
correct?
Absolutely, you will.
Thank you.
Can I, before you
Yes,
adjourn, sorry.
Yes,
Just for your future planning, there is a meeting currently scheduled on March the 26th. We will cancel that meeting. Number one, all the admin team will be gone, and two, that is 2 days after spring break. So if we need to schedule a meeting for any reason, I'll let you know, but at this point, based on our conversations at the retreat, we'll cancel the March 26th meeting.
So we'll just have just the first Tuesday.
Correct.
I'll ask, is that everything from everyone? I'll ask again, are there any objections to adjournment? None being heard, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.